Please be reminded of the 2-minute limit and just keep an eye on the timer right up there.
Where's the timer?
It's lights, colored lights right there.
Darlene, good afternoon, almost. I thought it was important to come today to talk about just where African American children are in the state of California. They're not. Even though there are a few parents who have the ability to successfully engineer through the process, there are many, many young people who do not know. I went recently to an IEP meeting where a child who had 6 years old had been placed on a minimum day through a hearing in the hearing office, but it's because the student didn't have the skill level to transition from task to task. I think I'm looking for accountability in the state of California. Just when does that happen? We've had several opportunities to engage the Black community in regards to student achievement, and we have had many opportunities to keep the same jobs and the same people providing those services for the past 35 years or more. And now people are moving their children into these positions to oversee what I call the plantation, because the failure is rampant. And I think you all are aware of the failure rate in Sacramento, because we also have the highest infant death mortality rate in the state of California right here in Sacramento. I think there needs to be some level of accountability, and I think that that's what was looked for when the offer was to continue to receive the funding in the state of California for the low-income children. But here we are with the same people. I participated at school site level. I was a DAC chair. I'm at my school site council, and we have the same people working in the same positions for the last how many years? Nothing really has changed. The only thing that's changed is the district now puts LCAP at the bottom of the agenda item, and at the school site council, well, we don't have a way to really target how we're helping those children. But the same children are the ones who are failing. And as far as graduation rates, thank you, but no thank you, because we have alternative programs in Sac City Unified School District where kids are moved from regular ed to alternative. Credit recovery is an option, and these kids are still going to jail. So I've learned to talk in 2 minutes, so thank you very much.
I guess, Darlene Anderson, most of my questions around student performance and the benefit of public education. When I look at African American students, I wonder where they are achieving and where they are not achieving. When I'm at my school site, I see my students, and I ask about certain students that are the social and emotional behavior stuff is going on, where you can't measure student performance. When I look at this district, I'm looking at the SDC classes. I'm trying to understand program performance for special needs kids, for regular ed kids, for targeted students who are in special programs who get the benefit by the bilingual program or whatever is going on. And then I know that there is a definite difference. The inability to articulate that there should be a concern and the district should have a concern around this, the needs of children who are coming from high poverty backgrounds, who are coming from the free and reduced, where we cannot measure student performance. When you have so much money targeted for American Legion, and I know that American Legion has a small budget, but you want to put more vice principals over there. And I know that the behavior, those kids are still dropping out over there. I'm saying that this is 2015. And we're moving into 2016. How public education serves all children is critical. But when you're looking at the budget and you're only saying, okay, we've got this much in the budget, they have no data. They have absolutely nothing. And then you're basing how you're going to spend those money. And you say at school site. Well, at my school site, I'm the school site council person. And do you think that they listen to me? It's very difficult to communicate. Then I have a concern for kids who are being placed on a minimum day, who are getting home to an empty house, who is expected to log on that computer, and where the district has no responsibility after they're at home. There's a problem just in essence when you're looking at how students achieve, how you're measuring student achievement, and how you're sharing that to the public. I, as a citizen, have a right to know, and I've been asking for a long time. There should be a comparison study done or some work. Work can't happen around no data. Thank you.
All right, let's pause the recording.
Good afternoon. Let's see. This is Sunday, September the 8th.
And school's already started for most children across the nation. And I think as a people, I don't know how to turn that chiming off. Maybe Tyler will come in, tell me how to turn off that notification while I'm recording. But most children have already started public school. And as a people, the conversation for this 2020 election that we're getting ready to have should be how we as a people, Black people, benefit from public services that are mandated by compulsory education laws. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about Head Start and Early Head Start, what that is. Early Head Start and Head Start promotes school participation by enhancing the social skills and cognitive development of children through provision of educational, health, and nutritional, social services, and it helps change people's lives. And so, you know, these are dollars that are counted by the number of people who live in your community. So the census is very critical. And since we're doing the census, they're counting the number of kids who live in the community who qualify for federal services and language services. This is how America operates. It's not taxation without representation. It's a taxation for representation. So in order to have a clear count of people you have to provide services for, that's what, you know, the census is all about. And we can understand how some may have wanted to manipulate the census simply because there are more people in certain areas that live in large communities than in rural areas. And so the difference between rural neighborhood and an urban neighborhood is really has to do with how many people are living there and how many people have to have services. And so when we're looking at services and how they come, how public education even works. So you have a kid, and here in Nevada, you're not mandated to put that kid in any public school or any public service until the age of 7. Now let's imagine that when we have people who are taking advantage of the public services at the age of 3, because the law says that if you have a child and it may need some special needs or special services to become, to be able to speak. And if your child's not talking by the age of 3, it should be something that should concern you, because education is something that has to happen, and it does happen as long as people have access to it. And we're really talking about access. And so when I moved here about a year ago, I went to try to figure out what was going on in Nevada, because I'm so involved in public education in California. It was a great opportunity to learn and support my children through the journey of life and to ensure that they had what they needed. And so my kids did participate in early educational services. John was in Head Start. Christopher, perhaps not, simply because we were in Italy around the time that he was would have been qualified for early Head Start. But they had preschool programs in Italy that he participated in. And then when I got here, I had John. And then, of course, later on in life, I had Tyler. And Tyler was born autistic, and I didn't even know what autism was, but he had epilepsy and he had some other learning needs. And so we made sure that all those needs were met. But that had to do with assessments and evaluations to determine if public school system and setting was even working. And it happened simply because Tyler was a Head Start child too. And he had speech and language development early because he wasn't speaking and I didn't know what was going on. And you're not expected to know, as a parent, you're not expected to know what's going on with your child just because you became a parent. There's no true way to understand everything you need to know when you have a child. And that's why we have an educational system to help support the community in growth and development. And if you understand that you're an American citizen because of the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment, whatever, reality says that we have an obligation to participate in services that are provided in our community. And as long as they're provided in our community, we have a personal responsibility to know just what, what's happening with our children. It's our personal responsibility once you have a child. We do have a responsibility But if you understand that responsibility because you were brought up in a family environment that provided that level of support, then you know how to support your child. But let us not pretend that we know that there are people around us every day who don't understand that they have the ability or responsibility to ensure that the mandated compulsory public education is making a difference and benefiting their child. And it's just not creating an opportunity for someone to go off on vacation for the summer and enjoy their Christmas and holidays while the child is just suffering. And I think that that's kind of like where we've moved to in America, because there's no requirement for accountability for the services across the board for every ethnicity. It seems like maybe Black people are just not even worth the investment, because that's what I hear when I'm listening to public meetings. It's like a struggle to allow them to have the same access to the resources, even though we're all paying the same for the resources. And if you're not paying taxes in one way, you're paying taxes in another way. And if you're not paying taxes in any way, guess what? You're part of the harvest. So someone is providing a public service to you to ensure that your life is sustainable, or that you have a benefit, and that somehow it's benefiting your children too. So we're all vital in America when it comes to human capital. I think, if you were paying attention during the time when, computers first started to evolve and Microsoft was saying that they had the perfect capital, it was human capital. And if we understand that there are no new investments in infrastructure and developing America and ensuring that access happens to all of us, then understand that the harvest was us and prison nation, because that seems to be where we're growing. We're growing in behavior analysis and behavior management and behavior, thoughts about who's online and what they're doing, and seeing if they can sell some information to people, basically selling information about what you're doing and what you may be thinking about. But back to public education and Head Start and being a parent, just being a parent. And as a parent, when you have a child or a grandchild, it's your responsibility to secure your tribe. And in securing your tribe, you want to make sure that they have access to knowledge that will help sustain them, that you're not the one. And so back to Head Start and what Head Start really is, it really just creates an equal playing field for families. And it also teaches, because it's a federal program, it teaches the responsibility of parenting. And it also helps develop the interpersonal skills of the people and the parents who participate on the PACT, which is the Policy Governance Committee, because they kind of like bring you in and teach you how America works. And so I think anybody who's been involved in Head Start, had a child in Head Start, understands that there's a much greater responsibility to ensuring that the child has access to the level of knowledge and that they were actually benefiting from. But then there are so many Black and brown people who are in public services or in public schools because of the mandated, necessity of public schools. They're just being documented through the process. And because they're not at grade level and have never reached grade level, it is critical to understand that they're not in control of their behavior. People are just collecting and documenting that child is dysfunctional. Now, what kind of sense does that make? Because I'll tell you what kind of sense it makes. Because I was reading an article online and I found that somewhere back east, they're using children's behavioral records to give children a longer period of time in jails. So they take their juvenile record and it follows you. But understand me when I say that even in Sacramento, Sac City was having that juvenile record follow the child to juvenile court. And from kindergarten on, anybody who joined in and put something in that file, it became a permanent record of the child's behavior. And actually, I had an OAH hearing for a parent and for a child. And the principal of the school stated that that's what they do, is send the child's behavioral record to court when the student actually ends up in court for any behavioral misbehavior, whatever.
And so if we understand that that's going on, then we have a duty responsibility to ensure that our children are not caught up in that issue, and that actually if we're going to commit to being an American citizen and commit to ensuring that our children have the best opportunity in life once we have them, then it has to be a commitment to learning about what the responsibility is of a parent when you have a child. Period. And that failure is never the option. Failure is just another way to say that you need to have a way to have a win instead of losing. And failure is just not an option when it comes to children. Because if we're going to fail our children, then we're going to say we're going to have this prison nation and there's nothing that can be done. But here in Clark County, when they have a discipline issue where they may have, the current suspension gaps in disproportionality in the data, whatever. When you look at Black kids, there are 259.7% is the baseline for suspensions. And the goal would have been 194.8% for 2018-2019. And the actual was 218%. And let's see, and the target in 2022 to 23 would be 61%. I mean, I'm trying to understand if we're talking about, what are we really talking about here? I mean, I've never seen disproportionality in this segment of willful defiance and issues that may be related to willful defiance, and how so many kids are being denied access to public education based on their inability to transition to service. But when you actually understand that you have children who perhaps start school late, when they're never able to catch up because kids have been in school since they were 3 years old, certain children anyway. And if your child's not starting until they're 7, who's going to go back and catch them up? No one. There is no catch up in public education. If you are below grade level in the 1st grade, then you are going to be below grade level in the 12th grade. And no one ever went back to say that you perhaps didn't have access, but they all focused on your inability to transition to the next step. And so, I think that people need to understand that transition is everything. Learning is about learning the next step to ensure that you are engaged in the process, and engagement is everything. But when you have a system that fails to document if you have the basic level skills to engage in the process, and then just continues to document how you refuse and how it was your choice that you somehow should have known. And I'm questioning the fact is, how should you have known if you never had the opportunity to learn? It's just critical to understand that we all must start at the same starting line. So if some kids have Head Start and other kids don't, and other kids have state-run preschools that it's only about behavior and they're not held to the same standards as the federal government's Early Start and Head Start program, we need to ensure that the federal government guidelines are met by all states. And you shouldn't be able to move from one state to another and have less civil rights or less opportunities because you're still an American citizen. Being born in America means that you have a right to assume that you will actually reach that goal of citizenship and understanding personal responsibilities to ensure that your child and your children or your family has access to the same resources that we all pay for, and that those resources are not allowing and turning blind eyes to the homeless, not allowing and turning blind eyes to children who are abused in school, but not allowing and just turning a blind eye to the failure in the public school system when it's not children who look like you. We all as Americans have a personal responsibility to ensure that functioning programs that are providing those personal services are functional. And when they're not functional, it is our personal responsibility to ensure that they do better. And how does that happen? It happens because people choose to step up and hold the system accountable. It happens because we're not locked into the one narrative of the local newspaper or the 3 channels on television anymore. People can really seek out and find information and lean to their own understanding, or lean not to their own understanding, but to try to gather information about the rules of public engagement and process. And if you know the rules, then you can force the rules to be implemented for your benefit, basically. But there is no way in the world that we should see a 200% gap of suspension data in any city that is targeting and really failing to implement the 13th, 14th, and the 15th Amendment, to be able to create an equal playing field for all people, including the formerly enslaved people, Black people who used to be shot because they wanted to vote, who used to be shot because they wanted to be in the store and spend money, and just like everyone else, they were making money. I mean, just because, what does freedom mean to you? That's what I'll ask. What does freedom actually mean to you? Because if we're not safeguarding our personal rights and ensuring that people who look like us have the same opportunity as us, and simply because our parents were engaged in the process, to ensure that, this rationality of reasonable accommodations happens. What's reasonable? And what is special ed in the first place? What is special education in America? It's been federally legislated that any child, even with a disability, has the same rights as a child with a non-disability to reach those same standards, and that the level of support being provided to that student meet the needs of that student. And the law is just the law. It's just a federal law. And every state has to abide by the federal law. But if the state chooses to ignore it, and the person who is entitled to the public service declines to fight for it, then you get nothing, because there's no promise of anything if you don't know that you're entitled to it.
Amen.
And so, I don't know, hopefully this live stream will catch up, and I'll get a couple of folks in the room. And I might even try to do some Facebook stuff, but we really all need to know what our personal responsibility is to ensuring that access happens for all people who are humans, who are looking for an accountability plan that targets and supports all people. And so this has been a long talk. I don't want to bore anybody. I don't want to go past 20 minutes. So I will tune back in a little while. Thank you for listening. Darlene Anderson out.
So I'm going to stop this as reflecting on trying to share the same message, the message as it is as urgent then and from the beginning of time since my involvement, that we as American citizens take more responsibility to ensure that access is happening for all children that look like us. So until I get back on in live stream, I'm gonna save this because it's already on my channel. See, this is my channel, and I have 231 subscribers. I will have to say like, subscribe, and follow. You know, that little bell. They say get the bell and follow me on every platform, as who knows what I'll be talking about. But believe me, I've been on a long journey, so I have much to share. I would like to know, what does freedom mean to you? And what is special education? Because once you understand those two key factors in life, freedom means that you have a responsibility to engage in the process of oversight and to question the measurable outcomes and maintenance of public services. And what is special education? Well, that's just the golden ticket. And so until we meet again, you'll understand that as you are a free person, you have to navigate the playing field for your children. And the responsibility falls on you, even if you're not aware. So until we meet again, Sterling Anderson, signing out. Hey, tune into my Parent Empowerment Hour on Anchor